Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be comparing 4 different types of machine embroidery thread. These are all metallic threads, and we're going to be going from the cheapest stuff on the market, which is the $4 a spool Simthread, all the way up to the most expensive thing that I know of, which is the Madeira FS, and these are $110 a spool. And I've got some samples stitched out here. Sorry for the mess. It's going to get a lot worse before the video ends. But I've got some samples stitched out right here. These are all flat stitched. And then I have some 3D puff stitch. And we're going to be comparing them. And we're going to be comparing them based on various criteria, which I have written down. Don't want to show you all the answers right away. But we're going to be going over price, colors, shine, strength, stretch, clarity, feel, and errors. And we're going to be comparing and contrasting these. So I will go through them initially just to talk about the price and everything, the price and the colors. So this is the Simthread right here. This I paid about maybe 15 bucks for this box of 4 different spools, and it's basically a metallic spool set, so it's silver and gold. And this, I actually equal them all out by telling you how much they cost per 1,000 yards. This actually costs $8.50 per 1,000 yards, and I give it a C for colors because it has 21 different colors of all different types, and 21 is a pretty good amount, you know, it's not too bad. The next up on the list is going to be a real big fan favorite here. This is the Kingstar. A lot of people love the Kingstar. Oh, and by the way, I will show you, this is the Simthread stitched out, but we'll go more into that later. So the Kingstar is a big fan favorite. I think it's actually the most popular thread on this video here. You know, Madeira is real popular, but Kingstar, as far as metallic thread goes, is I think the most popular. So this is $15 per 1,000 yards, and I don't know how many colors this has because there's not a definitive place that I know to buy it from. And I guess just to be transparent with you, I have the least experience with a Kingstar. When I got into machine embroidery, I used the Simthread, I hated it, and then I moved on to Madeira. I used the Madeira FS the most, and the Madeira CR second most, and then the Kingstar I only used a couple times. So the Kingstar, I don't know exactly how many colors it has, but I did give it a B for colors simply because there are a wide variety of them. I see that it's available on Amazon. It's available on various different websites, like all brands, all different kinds. Moving on to the Madeira CR. The Madeira CR is actually $13.70 per 1,000 yards. And I give it a B for colors because it has 40 different colors currently available. Lastly, we have the Madeira FS right here, which is between $20 and $32 per 1,000 yards. And this is actually the only one with versatility in the purchasing options, I believe, because you can buy it in the 5,500 yard spool or you can buy it in the 1,000 yard spool. And the 1,000 yard is $32 per 1,000 yards, and then the big one is going to be $20 per 1,000 yards there. So there's that. However, unfortunately, the worst part about the Madeira FS is going to be their selection of colors because they only have 20 colors, and they're all metals. Like there's bronze, and there's like 6 different types of silvers and 6 different types of golds. They're all metals, and it's really frustrating for me because this is absolutely my favorite, and I don't know why they don't just take the color palette that's available for the CR and port it over to the FS. Actually, I have them mixed up. I don't know why they don't just add more colors for this, because I honestly believe this would be the best metallic thread, bar none, if it had greater color options. So for the Madeira FS, I give that a D for color versatility. You know, 20 is a good amount of colors, but if they're all, you know, like 6 different types of golds and everything, it's only going to apply to a very small amount of people. And by the way, I use a lot of this stuff, you know. I really love it, but I would love to have more colors. Okay, so the next criteria we're going to is going to be the shine. Oh, and I should also show you the examples. This is the Kingstar right here. This is the Madeira CR, and this is the Madeira FS. I have this as a different thing because I just didn't want to waste the thread and the material and the time, honestly, to do another one of those, so I hope you excuse me for that. So let's get into the shine. So for the Simthread, I give this shine an A because it's really shiny, and in my opinion, it's too shiny. It really does look almost like a piece of plastic or something, and we'll get into the rigidity of that when I talk about feel, but it is incredibly shiny. Next up we have the Kingstar. I give it a B for shine, which I think is actually a really nice shine. I don't think anybody could complain about this. Moving on to the Madeira CR. This I gave a C in shine. I don't think it's as shiny as the Kingstar, but of course that's going to be your personal preference. It doesn't have to be super shiny. It's clearly metallic. Actually, you can actually see a big difference here when we get into the metallic threads. The puff embroidery. Like if I were to compare the puff embroidery, this is the Kingstar and this is the Madeira CR, you can automatically tell a huge difference in the amount of shine there. And lastly, with the Madeira FS, I give the shine here an A because it's just beautiful. And I think what differentiates the shine of this is that this picks up the shine and the light against the thread direction, whereas all of these, it kind of just, it's a strong contrast between the way that it picks it up with the thread direction and against it. All of them are kind of like that. But the Madeira one, the Madeira FS, it really does. It shines in all angles, and you can really see it hit the light and roll around it. It's very soft, but it's very pronounced at the same time, I think. Okay, so next up we have the strength. So starting off with the Simthread, and this right here, I give the Simthread in strength a D. And I'll break it for you just so that you have an understanding. I will try to be fair here and give everything the same amount of squares. Okay, so I'll give it 5 squares. That's roughly 5 squares. Very easy to break. And for contrast, this is my standard thread. It is a Madeira. It's practically like floss. It wants to cut into your fingers, really. So, it's quite the big difference. So for strength, I give Simthread a D. Because it's not like it breaks super easy, but it definitely does break easy. Next up for the Kingstar is going to be strength. I gave that an A. This is actually the strongest metallic thread on the video. Once again, I'll give it 5 inches of space. Yeah, I think you can probably tell that that's harder to break. Whoop. It's going to be such a mess before the end of this video. And I just threw that right on the floor. I'll have to sweep. So next up, the Madeira CR. For strength, I gave that a B. I probably should have written this the other way around. See, it's definitely stronger than the Simthread, but it's not as strong as the Kingstar. And lastly, with the Madeira FS, I give the strength a B. It's about the same as the CR. And you can actually tell that that break was a little different. And then that actually takes us into our next segment, which is going to be the stretch. Now, stretching isn't necessarily a thing you might want or you might need in your thread, but it is something that I didn't know I needed, but now I actually prefer it specifically for the sake of metallic thread. You can see earlier that I did the Madeira polyester thread and there was no stretch there whatsoever. But I really think stretch is nice for metallic thread, because when you get into doing puff embroidery, this is the Madeira FS, and the Madeira FS easily won with the stretch, and it just wraps around it perfectly. And also the stretch allows it to be more easier to work with tensions, whereas the other ones, it's a little harder to work with tensions. So let's get into the stretch. Honestly, this has none. The Simthread for stretch, this is F. Try and give it 5 spaces here. See, you can't even stretch it, because when you try, it just breaks. You see, I should have done stretch before strength. Kingstar. Kingstar, I gave that a D. So it's got a little bit of stretch to it. See, it's a little bit. The Madeira CR, I give that a D also. Also a very little bit of stretch. Actually, that's stretching pretty good right there. So maybe that, I should have given that like a C, you know, but I've already got the scores written down. Okay, so for the Madeira FS, I gave this an A. We're going to give it 5. See, it stretches a lot further. And I will show you an example. I don't know how well you can see this. This is the Madeira CR thread. It's something I did for a customer recently. When I digitize this, I have it set up, and it's complicated, but basically the ending of this shape right here ends right here, and because it's on that angle, the angle carries up in terms of the stitch direction, and that means that because it's a longer angle, that the thread is longer, and then the thread isn't going to be as tight. So you can see that the thread is actually a little bit looser on there. Whereas with the Madeira thread, I don't think I have an exact example. I mailed off the good examples. But the Madeira thread stretches, and if you get the density right and you're digitizing, then it's going to totally envelop and really suck up all that foam, and it's going to come out so clean. This is actually a lower density than you would need. And also, by the way, all of these, I didn't do any sort of post-processing to them. It's just exactly how it came out of the machine. This one is all right, but this is a problem here that you can see. This is why stretching is important, because you can actually see that the thread space here is longer because that section is wider, and you can actually see that it moves around, and you can see the foam underneath it. It's too easy to move, whereas with the Madeira FS, it's not. And this is even a lower density than that one is. That one's a higher density, and this one is a tighter fit because it stretches. So moving on to the next point, we have Simthread. Simthread, we're moving on to clarity. So in regards of clarity, that's just going to mean I've got a lot of really close objects here, because this is only just gold thread. The black is just fabric. But I've got a lot of really close objects here, and depending on the type of thread, it could leave a little bit of lint. It could just not look as clear, like the lines don't look as clear. And for Simthread, I give the clarity a C. It's got a few little things. Mostly, it breaks apart in these tiny little sections right here. Believe it or not, those are actually fill circles inside of that. So it's basically like one of these, but super tiny. And when you get in there that small, the thread, you can tell that it starts to degrade. And also, the lines are kind of thicker. So it's like the thread is fatter. And in general, one of the qualities that I don't like about the Simthread is that it's very wiry, you know. It's not pliable like a wire, but it definitely feels very wiry. And it's the only one out of this list that is just uncomfortable, but I'll get to that momentarily. So next up we have the Kingstar, and the Kingstar, I gave that a B for clarity here. So Kingstar, there is a tiny little bit of fuzz, and I don't know if you'll be able to catch it. It probably would go away if I were to run like a lint brush over it, but I didn't want to do that for the sake of the video. I guess I could. I don't even know if it'll pick up, but it's just a minor amount of it. It still looks like it's there, so it might be just part of the thread. Like, you can actually see it more right in here, right between these two sections. See how it's like kind of fuzzy in there? And if we were to compare it to something like the CR, see, the CR is much more cleaner in that spot than the Kingstar. And it's not really that big of a deal, but it is to me because I do a lot of objects that are just there like that. So Madeira CR, in terms of clarity, I give that an A. Like, if we were to compare it to the Kingstar, which I already did. Yeah, CR. So that's really nice and clean. And for the Madeira FS, this is actually, it's the best, I think, in terms of clarity. Some really fine lines going on here. Like, this is a sub 1 millimeter satin stitch, and then also you have the tiny little fill stitches in there, and it doesn't degrade. The one reason why I did this, actually all of these are done with it, the entire thing. And it just holds up very nicely, even with this one right here. I guess it's cheating because I have more examples of this on hand. You can actually see that you can get objects so close that they're touching, and there's no like fuzz or anything. So the next thing is going to be the feel. So starting off with the Simthread. The Simthread, it's rough. It honestly feels like sandpaper, especially when you go against the grain, but it's also rough going with the grain, going with the thread direction. And it's just not comfortable to wear. Like, you do not want to get this for any sort of clothing or anything like that. The next one is going to be the Kingstar, which is, I give that a C. It's pretty good. It's smooth. It's definitely a lot smoother than the Simthread. It's smoother in both directions, going with it and against it. And actually, I gave the Madeira CR the same score of a C, because they both feel very similar. There's a difference, but I can't really say what's worse or better because it's so similar. So I would say that this might be all right to put on clothing, but honestly, I think the best thing for clothing is going to be the Madeira FS, and I gave that an A. It's like, if you were to talk about the flexibility, it's really something that's hard to convey through video, but it just feels like fabric, you know. It's so pliable. This is totally comfortable to have on clothing. It's not wiry at all. It's smooth going with the thread, going against the thread. It's about the same smoothness. It's really smooth. So I gave that an A for feel. Now let's get into errors. We're going to start off with the Simthread once again. This actually had a lot of errors. Surprisingly, none of them were breaks. No breaks, but I did have 3 cut errors, which means that when the machine would tie the thread and cut it to change to a different object, it would hang up, and you would see like the thread sticking up here. It would catch so hard that it would cause my machine to just stop, and it wouldn't cut it. I assume that's because it's very wiry in comparison. It's hard and brittle compared to everything else here. So there are 3 cut breaks, and then there was 1 tie error there, where it wasn't a cut break, but it was a cut error. And then there was a tie error where it would go in and it wouldn't tie correctly. So I gave that what did I give that? I gave that an F for errors because it failed the worst on this list. And honestly, I have a multi-needle machine with an analog tension setting, and I have it fine-tuned for metallic thread. And, you know, if this is giving me errors on this, you are going to have a hard time with your home embroidery machine. Like if you got a flatbed or something with a digital tension adjustment, as you don't have the same fine degree of adjustment on that. So next up we have the Kingstar, and Kingstar ran nicely. The Kingstar thread. The Kingstar thread ran nicely. The only problem that I encountered, aside from the small amount of fuzz, was with the puff embroidery. Because there were times that it just would, I think it either broke or, no, it wouldn't cut properly. It had cut errors. I think this one had 2 cut errors on it. And it just didn't work as well as any of the other threads in terms of machine functionality on puff foam. And I don't know if it's just something specific to puff foam, because I use the really dense puff foam from Madeira. I use the bodybuilder stuff. It's really dense. So moving on to the CR. In terms of error, oh, by the way, the feel of CR is definitely coarser. It's kind of a rough feel in comparison to the Kingstar. So I'm not really a big fan of this compared to the Kingstar, honestly. I prefer the feel of the Kingstar over this, and I'm really not a fan of the CR in general. The only reason why I buy the CR is because it's not available in this. If Madeira were to do that, then I would be all over it, and these would be going to Goodwill. Because I didn't have any errors when doing this, but like I say, my machine is tensioned to be very good with with metallic thread. But I have had errors with this in the past, and comparatively speaking, I know the FS is a lot easier to work with. And that being said, the Madeira FS is going to be an A for errors, because, of course, once you get your machine tensioned properly, you're not really going to have much errors because it's got that stretch to it, and it just gives you more leeway in terms of the tension. And in fact, I turn my tension down so far that it's almost no tension there, and it still stitches just fine. It stitches nicely. I actually use one of these. I can't give you the reading right now because I'd have to run some of the thread through, but I've got one of these, and it really helps out. I recommend that everyone with an embroidery machine get one of these. Mostly people with a multi-needle machine. It's a Tajima top thread tension gauge, but I also check my bobbin thread with it too. So also I want to go over the average scores. Okay, so the average scores, because I want to tell you which one is going to be the best, and I don't even know what that is yet. So the Simthread, that is a D+, and honestly, I know it's not going to be that. Don't buy the Simthread under any circumstances unless you're just... No, just don't buy it under any circumstances, because like even if you got like $5 to your name and you're just experimenting with your grandma's embroidery machine or something like that, this will give a bad taste in your mouth, in my opinion. So Simthread, it's a D+, but as far as I'm concerned, don't get it. Kingstar is an average of C+. Kingstar is pretty good. I totally understand why it's as popular as it is. It's got a nice color variety. It's nice and shiny. It's smooth. It stitches out nicely. I had a few problems with the puff stitching, but otherwise, I can totally understand why people use this. The Madeira CR, I gave that a C+, and that's an average score of C+, like, combining everything. So comparatively, it's basically on par with the Kings. Oh, you're not even looking at what I'm looking at. It's basically on par with the CR and the Kingstar here. But the difference is that the Madeira CR is $13.70 per 1,000 yards, and the Kingstar is $15. And I don't know which one has more colors, but I do know that the Madeira, you get more within the same website, I think, because Kingstar is on so many different websites that I don't know where to get it. Like, you can let me know in the comment section below. Definitely don't get it on Amazon. It took me 2 weeks to get this one spool right here, so I think somebody drop shipped it to me or something. Like, they bought it out of a set and broke it up and sent it to me. But the Madeira FS, the average score for this is going to be a B+, and this is between $20 and $32 per 1,000 yards. So I would say that given my experiences with this, if you are looking for a wide variety of colors, and you're pretty much looking at the Kingstar and the Madeira CR. There's a lot of colors for these, and the Madeira CR is slightly cheaper than the Kingstar, but the Kingstar you can buy it in smaller quantities. If you are running a business, this can be very beneficial for you because you need a lot of different colors, and you don't necessarily want to buy the big ones, but with Madeira CR, you don't have a choice. However, if you're like me and you primarily use making a mess. If you use primarily metallic threads that are metal colors, like this is a copper, this one here is a rose gold, maybe you didn't see the copper and rose gold, but you can actually buy this in the smaller spools. And I think if you do use metallic colors in terms of metals, then the Madeira FS would be the best place to go to, because these are like $30 a pop for these, and they're really the best. And you can say that maybe the value isn't there for you and you'd rather get something that's $15 per 1,000 yards or something. But for me, the value is it's really nice, it feels really good, and it works with me. It's easier to tension. Plus, I don't have to get up a billion times to check the machine when I'm stitching something out, provided I have my tension set right. So anyways, that is all for the video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below, and hopefully this simplified things for you and made it easier to understand. You can let me know if it did that, because that would make me happy, and I will see you later. Also, if you have requests for another video, let me know, because I need ideas.